would like to welcome you to our first San Diego Media Pros meeting in 18 or more months, which I know I am very happy to be back. When I arrived today and we had all of this activity, it was just really fabulous to be back here and also on this set that Dan Cheatham has created for us, which I'm going to have him come up and tell us a little bit about. But first, I just wanted to say thank you for being here. We've missed getting together with all of you, and tonight is going to be a fun program where we all have a chance to share some production stories, things that have happened to us on set. We get to laugh, we get to learn, since that's what Media Pros is all about, and I'm just really glad you're here. So we're planning some meetings coming up in November. We're not sure exactly what the topic's going to be, but we're thinking it might be a look kind of at filmmaking from not a step-by-step process, but oh, here comes Jeffrey Lehman. Hey, Jeffrey. Looking at filmmaking. So we'll keep you posted about that. And then in December, we're looking at doing a social, again, like we've done in the past, if we can. So finally, right? Although we did get together in July, so that was good. Thank you. Thank you. Dan Cheatham, come on up. I wanted to allow Dan to tell you a little bit about this set from the standpoint of, I don't know, yeah, production disasters. Take it away, Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan. For those who know me, this is kind of what we do. We run the sets. I'm a first assistant director on the sets down in the San Diego area. Up towards North County, I reside up in Temecula. I'm an actor, a stunt actor. I have a stunt team, stunt coordinate, and I'm an armorer. We'll get to that. This is when she said the title of what we were going to do, production disasters or production stories, production talks, right? Things that have gone not quite so right on sets. I used to do a lot of events over in Germany, and Germany's full of weather. And tents down is just the usual call, right? So I thought, because we had just been down on the Mexican border not all too long ago, we had a windstorm come through during the night, and that's about what the tent looked like in the morning, right? Crafty was under it, right? We also had another tent which was holding. We found it a little later. Right, that one we just tore down, put what was left of it away. Right, there wasn't much left of it. It can happen, right? So, Crafty was moved. So was the holding tent. And I was thinking, well, you know, it's fall. We have to have a pumpkin. Script says this is called 2 pumpkins. So you get on set, you got your 2 pumpkins, and one of the tables breaks right on the pumpkin. So there we go. Okay, so landslide, and it took the lighting with it. So got the lights on set. Welcome everyone. I recognize some of you. I don't recognize all of you, which is great, right? I'm also on the board. I'm doing the social media. So any sympathies and help you can give, I'm all for it. Any helpful hints, that would also be great. I guess I'm kicking off the meeting a little bit. As I said, I'm an armorer, and I'm going to just do one little thing because it's like the hot theme out there, so I got the hot theme button. I want to memorialize Miss Hutchins, right? I feel deeply for all of the people on that set. There were some mistakes apparently made. I'm going to just say one thing: no live ammo on your sets, period. And I feel for all of them that were on there. They're going to be having to work with that for a long time, as will we, right? Safety on your sets. Safety is first, safety is last, and safety is the last thing you pack, right? We will be doing sometime next year one of our meetings on safety on set, right? As a first AD, I'm usually one of the ones who is being yelled at to make sure that all the safety is in place. So I'll be that pit bull on set going around. All right? Jane? I'll kick it back that direction.
Thank you, Dan. Didn't you do a great job? Like, this is really amazing. This is 3 times what I was expecting when he said crash tent, smashed pumpkin, and then suddenly we have crafty leftovers. And I'm noticing that there's a light that's flickering over here under that tent, which was making me nervous for a minute when I was standing over there. I'm like, something's going to light on fire. Where's our safety guy? Mark Masonov, come on up. I understand you have a few news items for us tonight. And then Mark's going to act as our MC and do all of our transitions and invite you up to share your stories. Mark.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is just brief. We've all been busier, which is great. So these are just a few brief items that I managed to pull from the fine selection. So many of you have probably heard IATSE and has reached a tentative agreement, and that will now go before all of its members. The membership managed to also include 20,000 plus additional members outside the Los Angeles and New York area. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it has extended its reach. They're going to be presenting that now within the next several weeks. It'll be brought up for a vote and whether the membership agrees on it or not. What's generally going on, it includes a low-wage IATSE members are seeing a boost of up to 60% in the hourly minimum. Members are receiving a minimum of 9% scale wage increase by the end of the 3-year contract, and changes to rest periods, meal breaks, and improved compensation from streaming services. And there were really no more other specifics provided. So if you know an IATSE member, they may know more because this will be sent to them. But just keep an eye out on what that is, because that ripples down to what we do, which we're not union, but that will ripple down to how we hire people and are looked upon by those who do work on both sides. Some of you may have seen that commercial long ago where the peanut butter guy runs into the chocolate guy. You got peanut butter in my chocolate, you got chocolate, and all of a sudden you have Reese's Cup, right? It's like these accident that happened. Well, DJI has taken that with their new 4D camera. I don't know if you have seen this thing. It's part gimbal, it's part camera, it's part Movi, it's part 4-axis. It's an odd-looking camera, but its specs are supposedly out of this world. So if you have a chance to look at this new DJI 4D camera, it has a chipset, the most powerful imaging platform to date. I probably have heard every camera manufacturer mention that, but they're mentioning it as well. Supports internal 8K RAW, precise color reproduction, low latency imaging. There's an 8K and a 6K. Can record ProRes 422 HQ and ProRes RAW, as well as the standard H.264 codecs. It tops out, the 6K tops out at 60 frames per second with the option to go 120 and 4K. And it also has the dual native ISO. That's becoming very popular. Sony has it on their line of cameras coming out or that are out now. Panasonic has had that. It seems to be a hot button item going on in the dual native ISOs. And it has some built-in ND filters from ND2 to ND15. ND512, my mistake. Plus a 4-axis gimbal that takes out this bounce shake that a lot of folks have said with your Ronins when you rock with the RS2 or with the R2. It has this kind of a bounce. It takes this out with this 4-axis gimbal. So something to certainly look into on that. It has a number of other automatic focus modes. It also has LiDAR range finder as far as 33 feet to locate and track subjects in situations. So it's an interesting camera. The price point, it'll be $7,200 in December of 2021. And that's for the 6K. The 8K version will be $12,000 at a later date. So that hasn't been announced yet. And then finally, Adobe Max is happening now. You could probably still register if you wanted to catch in the last couple days, but Adobe Max is happening now. Adobe also released a new Premiere Pro, I think back on the 25th, just recently, version 22. They have now aligned all of their audio and video versions to be the same. So now everybody's on 22 for all that stuff, for those who follow that. Number of things that go into that. So you certainly want to look, if you're a Premiere Pro person, so look into that. And Final Cut Pro 10, I believe, dropped a new update as well on October 18th. With an object tracker, has cinematic mode to support the cinematic modes in your iPhone 13 cameras. So that's an easier reach going over there. And it has the new neon effect that adds a glow to text and graphics. So they got that going for them, too. So way to go, Final Cut. Those guys are rocking the boat on that. It's just awesome. And that's just a little tidbits of news you can use. So thank you. Jane, you want to go from here? All right, well, then we'll open the meeting right now at this. So we'll start with, as Dan said, the safety is everyone's responsibility. So I want to mention that to everybody because we have cords lying all around. And as it gets darker, watch your step. Watch your step, folks. Step gingerly. Pick up your feet. Don't drag them. And so no one trips and falls. Though it's a soft landing, just be very careful with that and on that. And then, yes, Alan? Oh, that a question. And we're going to kick off then with our production stories. These are the great collection of, I'm sure, wonderful things and not so wonderful things that have happened and on sets or before sets or after sets or during post-production. And so we want to open it up to those who want to regale us with a story. You got a couple minutes here. People can ask you questions. I'll take volunteers before I tell some people. So I know some people signed up. Who would like to start? Melissa, come on up. Melissa Street, ladies and gentlemen. Give her a hand as she makes her way up here. Get it? Make up with her way. Okay. That's funny.
How are you?
Remember, kids, tipping is not a
Ooh, hey. All right. Hi, you guys. I know most of you. Nice to see you again. Okay, so this story is not funny, unfortunately, and it's the most terrified I've ever been on a set. And don't worry. Some of you who hire me, it's not about you who are sitting here. But you probably will know this production company, even though I'm not going to say the name. Years and years and years ago, about a decade ago, I was asked to film a storyline that had to do with prisoners, young prisoners, being tempted by other prisoners to join the Taliban. And they needed a tattoo artist who could, or a effects makeup artist who could hand draw tattoos on these young kids who were prisoners at the time. So I was out of town while I was taking this phone call to book this client and the shoot, but I asked them to please send me all the information. I wanted to know what tattoos, I wanted to see the people, I wanted to know what we were doing exactly, all the things. I was flying in at 10 o'clock at night, and by 7:30 the next morning I'd be on their set. So they gave me most of the information, not all of the information. And of course, we were filming at the Otay Mesa prison, which is an amazing place. I hope none of you get to visit there. And when I pulled up and looked at this place, I was like, well, you know, we're probably just shooting outside the prison, using it as a background, or at the very most, we're using that area where, you know, in the movies where people talk to each other on the little handsets, or maybe somebody's just getting out of prison and we're using whatever, the gates or whatever. No. We're actually going in the prison. So I'm standing in the office with all the other production people, with all the crew, and I get handed a clipboard that has a waiver on it that says if I get taken hostage, that I won't hold the state of California responsible for that. And I'm like, I think I'm not going to do this. And my producer at the time for this production company was another woman. And I loved how I allowed her to coercively control me into signing said document, because my reaction as a woman was so over the top. This is not going to be a big deal. The warden's going to be with us. We obviously have armed guards. I'm like, armed guards? Armed guards? Where exactly in the prison are we going? Exactly. You know, and they're like, well, we're going inside, so this is like protocol. Okay. Oh, and by the way, you can't pee and you can't eat, because if you want to do that, we all have to leave. We can't just let you leave. We all have to leave. We all have to take our equipment, everything. We have to break down. So don't have to go to the bathroom or any of that. Okay. All right. I'm going to do this. We're going to get it done. It's going to be easy. I don't want to hear about it, whatever. Because I'm still thinking in my head somewhere that we must be safe. We must be going into a part of this prison that is inactive. Maybe they use it for film. I don't know, but it must not be anything but that. No. We drive to a level 4 cell block that is active. Level 4 has rapists and murderers. And we walk in, and these people are actually in their cells with their little windows, these prisoners looking at us. Good times. And this really nice prisoner allowed us to film in his cell. Isn't that nice? He got like extra yard time for that. So, okay. These 2 guys who I have to do makeup on and have to draw these very specific tattoos, as you can imagine, were scared because they gave them real uniforms from the prison to wear. And they were freaked out and didn't want to leave me because they didn't think I would get left in the prison accidentally. So they wanted to stay right next to me. And I'm like, dude, I don't care. I'm done. I'm already breaking out in hives. I'm like, hyperventilating. I'm losing my brains. So they go and they do this thing. We film. All of a sudden, we're taking too long. And the person in charge of the cell says, you guys have to stop, move all of your equipment back against a wall, and stand up against it. The armed guards came and stand in front of us. And it's med break time, and the doors flew open. And Melissa lost it. I literally lost it. I cried. I screamed at my producer. There were things I didn't ever need to see in my whole life that I saw. It was really sad, and it was the most terrified I'd ever been. So please don't ever do that to me. All right, like please give everybody the information, everybody, because I think my theory was, they knew that this was going to happen. They knew what they were doing, and nobody would want to do it. So they didn't tell everybody what was really going on. So I haven't worked for that production company since. But there you go. That's my horror story. And it was scary. Very scary.
Thank you, Melissa. Oh, Jeff, you have a question? Oh, Jeff Lehman, ladies and gentlemen, has a horror story. Anything from recently, maybe the last couple weeks? Maybe a car falling off a ledge or anything? Come on up, Jeff. Jeff Lehman, for those who don't know, and for those who do, still Jeff Lehman.
I'm going to give you a couple of fast, rapid-fire stories, and not just stories. I think maybe some takeaways. We're all, affected one way or another by what just happened with Alec Baldwin. But I mean, literally, a similar thing happened on our set a week before. But we didn't have live rounds. That was one thing I insisted from the very beginning. And there was talk by the executive producer / director that he wanted a shotgun to blow out a window and stuff like that. I said, no, we're not doing that, And we hired a stunt coordinator that had an okay system that allowed us to break out the window, which I think we're going to be able to edit somewhat believably. But there is a scene where there's a jar broken in a restaurant that's supposed to be, they think it's a hitman. And I had bought a paint gun and loaded it with hard balls. And I had already sent the rest of the crew and the cast out of the room. And Mike Brueggemeyer, you're here, right? He said he was coming. Mike Brueggemeyer was the director of photography. And then you probably can guess who else was in the room. As I put down the gun away to put on my safety goggles, someone picks up the gun and starts waving it at us. So yeah, and obviously it's not a loaded gun. We didn't have any. We did have some munitions on set because we actually had real policemen, and they're required to have their firearms. So, yeah, I think it's important that when you're on set, no matter what position you're in, that you really take control when you see an unsafe thing. Because even though it's a paintball gun, it was loaded with a hard ball. Nobody's probably going to die from that, but somebody could get seriously injured by that, especially at close distance. You should not ever be waving even a prop gun at anyone. That's just not something you do. And so I think that's something that you want to impress on people. Now, horror stories. God, I mean, just pick a country. What country do you want me to tell you a horror story in? What do you want me to talk about? Arresting. Here's again from 2 weeks ago. We had this little chase scene that we wanted to do, but there was no real good place to do it where we had a permit. And I found a good place that was very close by. Totally empty parking lot, fortunately for the day that we were doing all the rest. And Mike had put up a camera in the middle of the road and then got clear away. And we did it. We did a slow practice, and then we did a little faster first take, and then we did a little faster third take. And on the third take, it just so happens that a police officer was driving by and saw us and thought it was a real car chase. And then I had actually run this little smart car off the road. So I will. Here's a little learning lesson. When he pulls up in front of me, he says, "What are you doing?" And he comes out. He's got his hand on his weapon and all the rest. And I said, "We're making a student film." A little lesson there. They're always nicer about student films. And then we were able to dispel that pretty quickly. But back to horror stories and safety. We were filming whitewater rafting in Maine. And there was a great little perch for my main camera to film us going through this great canyon. And we had actually two cameras on board this whitewater raft, and my cameraman and assistant cameraman decide that the perch is not good enough. They want to get 30 feet closer, and they get on, because I stress safety, and I talk very specifically about where I send people, especially in situations like this. And they decide 30 feet is better, 30 feet closer is better, despite me being a quarter mile away. And they get on what they didn't realize was flaking shale, which is you step on it and it flakes away. And they have $125,000 of my camera equipment with them, and they are on their stomachs as the shale is flaking away, because they knew immediately when it started flaking away they better get on their stomachs or they're going off a 300-foot cliff. And they were afraid to tell me for about 3 days until it finally came out, because they were more afraid to tell me what they had done, with me being very specific on where I wanted them, than I think they were of the fall itself. But they were terrified when they told me the story, and this was 3 days after it happened. So I think the key thing from all of those, and if we have more time, I have tons of stories, is, think about the safety in advance, and then be very clear with all of your crew that this is specifically what you want them to do. And, more communication is better. So, and sometimes I find that even it seems stupid almost if you repeat it 2 or 3 times, but I find sometimes that even though they're sitting there looking at you and they're paying attention to what you're saying, they're really thinking, oh, I got to grab the gaffing tape, and oh, we've got to get the light the first time you tell them. And so then the second time, they're kind of really engaged. And sometimes it's smart even to ask them a question like, do you know where you're going? Do you know what you're doing? And stuff like that in dangerous situations. Obviously, most of the time, it's not a concern. We can talk about multiple arrests and all sorts of stuff that have happened to me all over the world, but we'll give up the mic to someone else and their horror stories.
Is there a height difference? Did you notice the height difference? I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, a little bit there. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for pointing that out. Sadly, as if you didn't know that. Yeah, and I will echo certainly what Jeff was saying, and to Dan's point that Dan, AD's in charge of safety, but every one of us is a safety officer on set. Everybody, you see something unsafe, you stop it, and that's just what you have to do. So everybody pay attention to that. Thank you. And if we have more time at the end, we'll circle back and hear about your stories in a Tibetan prison. I'm sure those are wonderful. Maybe that's another time. Who else? Who'd like to go next? Dan, or you got something? Okay, Dan Cheatham. You met him already. Don't clap. You already met him.
Hi. So I'll tell some horse stories. So a lot of people don't really know. Over in Germany, I did a lot of my work for film and television, right? And that involved a lot of horses. I happened to have jousted professionally for 8 years, right? And did great big battle scenes off the horseback for film and television. And two little production hiccups kind of hit me when we were talking about, well, what could you talk about? One happened to me, and one happened, luckily, to someone else, right? When you're dealing with horses on sets, listen to the horsemen, okay? Like where to stand and where not to stand, where to hold your cameras, and where you shouldn't be when the horses are moving, right? So we were at a large tournament. They were filming for television, right? And we had 2 cameramen. It was a television broadcast, but they were filming it. We were going to use parts of the cuts for other work, but it was going to be in part live, right? And I had two guys with, the big cameras, and they wanted to catch the horses both at the start and on another set as they're leaving the tournament field, okay? Well, the 2 places you don't want to be if you're filming any of the live action with horses is at the start or where the horses exit. It may be the best place in the world to get those wonderful action shots, but it is certainly not where you want to be. So the first one at the Maxburg, they lined up the cameras right where the horses were starting into the field, right? And it had rained the night before. You can see this one coming. So they lined up their cameras, and we told them, you need to get back from the back of the horses. So you have to imagine the horses are all lined up. Here they come right up behind the butts, right? And they set their cameras there. And we're parked with the horses, and we didn't tell them because they didn't listen, right? So they called out the first rider, and the first camera got pummeled with mud, right? And immediately after, because this is the introduction, they called the second rider, and there went the second camera. And the rest of the filming was rather short from there on. They spent most of the time cleaning the fronts of their cameras. So it was funny, especially as I was third rider out, so I got to catch the whole thing. So on another set that was in Satzwey, one of the largest tournaments in Germany, regularly, just unfortunately got hit by the floods in Germany. The field is fine. They're putting that back together. We had another cameraman also broadcast, and he decided he was going to catch that point where the horses leave the field of tournament. That's where the horses are hot. We call hot. They're pumping. It's just like when they're at the competitions and they're cutting. All right, the horses get really hot, and we have our tournament runs. The lances drop, and at some point you have to exit field. When you exit field, those horses are gunned. Right, you get off the field because you got to keep the show going. Right. And we had warned them, stay the hell away from the exit, right? Well, our safety guy had gone over to the back because he was dealing with a lot of the sharp, pointy things that we deal with, the swords, the long spears, the halberds, and stuff like this. And he didn't catch that one of the big cameramen, right, with this 50,000 euro brand new broadcast camera, had gotten himself posted right where the horses exit. Right, and we didn't catch it, right, because we're in the show. And 2 of the horses went up, wheeled, caught the third, and we went straight on out, okay? And about the time we made that last turn, we saw him. And the horse on the left outside shouldered this guy, right? Well, you have to understand that the field of tournaments here, and then there's this creek that runs along the edge of this. And we were doing stunts off into that creek at the very end with fire and flame and blah, blah, blah. Well, he luckily just got shoved into the water. But this camera did this. Everyone in the entire field of tournament sees this. The other camera's catching this thing doing this. And we're going, oh God, it's going in the water. 50 euros, right? Well, it was marks at the time, but the equivalent is 50,000 today. And it comes down and lands this far from the edge and sinks into the mud. Another camera down. So when you're dealing with horses, listen to the horseman, right? And then the last one, a quick one. Two things happened on this set. I was Richard the Lionheart, and we were filming his death. Okay, he takes a crossbow bolt here. Richard comes out of the saddle, right, and has to do a stunt fall with the crossbow bolt here, down and roll. Okay, and stay sharp in camera. Okay, they're racking. So we're up at I forget the name of the castle at the time, but I'm doing that roll. I take 9 runs at this thing. And I take, I think, seven falls, right, to catch this thing. And lighting's wrong. Do it again, right? Run the horse back up. We got multiple horses there. We'd been filming all day on this thing. It was the life, and it was at I think it was the Trifels. And so we finally get this thing wrapped. I'm tired. I've hit this ground more than you can imagine. Right, and they had set a mattress, and every time you came off, that mattress was covered with straw, and you'd hit that thing, you'd hit hard. It was a thin mattress. It was the old type of just stuffed mattresses. It wasn't anything that went bounce, right? And we hit this thing. Then we got it all wrapped. So I go home, right? Pack the horse, blah, blah, blah. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call. Dan, we need you again. Why? We'll be over it in Mines down at the, and I'm like, why? We wrapped on this. It's in the can. There was dead silence on the other end of the phone, and he said, well, there was a small mistake. Why? We got the film back. Someone dropped the wrong chemical in, and it came back black. We lost the entire day of shoot. The entire day. It came back black. This is when we were shooting on film. It doesn't happen as much as today, right? So, we reset to wrap this thing really quickly. We go to the new set. I'm by myself. That's a pain because horses like to be in sets of 2 and 3, right? They had run out of the budget, and we had to do this on low budget to get this thing back in the can and at least get the scene of Richard's death, because that was one of the prime scenes in this television series. So we're running it. And again, it's night this time. They've run smoke into this area. That loud sish of the things doesn't sit well with horses, right? So my horse is as nervous as it gets. He's doing an upwards gallop. We do this. We finally get it. It's on the 5th take. It's the 5th dump off off the horse onto this mattress, and I make my run, catch the crossbow bolt. It's a fake, right? I take it. I drop off. I come down, and I am wearing French shoes. These French shoes have these long points on them, and it caught in the stirrup. My horse is taught to go that way when I go that way off the saddle. He goes that way, my leg goes that way, I'm dropped like this, and I miss the mattress and land on that cement slab. Bang! 2 ribs, right? The camera thinks this is wonderful. I can't breathe. I'm going, they pick it up, sticks and all. 8 men run with this camera over on top of me. The guard sees what's happening, improvise, coming over, grabbing me, and dragging me out of camera. Right? Cut. The crew runs over to the trailer. They had not only film, but they had one of the new digital things that caught it as well to see if they'd actually got it on film. leaving me dying on the ground, right? And the requisitioner, otherwise known as the prop master, walks over about 5 minutes later, and he looks down and he says, Dan, you're not doing so well, are you? I'm like, I'm going to kill them, right? So, right, safety on set wouldn't have helped. But they got their shot, and that was the actual clip that they put in the broadcast. So there's your stories.
Thank you, Dan. I think I would sacrifice the safety on set meeting for the how to joust meeting. I think that I would rather see that personally for that. All right, who's next? Who else wants? Eric, I know, and Mike is here. Mike, I have this chair here. I have two other chairs over there. Anyone else? Fred, you want to go? Fred? Okay, Fred Ashman, folks. I know he's taller than me. I can go taller here.
Well, we had a couple of them along the way. First of all, I've done a lot of air-to-air, both as a director in the Learjets and helicopters. I don't fly helicopters, but I have flown the Lear and qualified as a second in command. But we did those all safely, had, happy to say, no incidents. But a lot of what I learned in aviation applies to what we're talking about in safety in our productions. And one of the things is that almost everything, including what happened recently, involves a fatal chain. It's not one incident that happens. It's 2, 3, 4 mistakes that compound themselves. And they should have been caught at multiple levels. How many people touched that gun and didn't check it? If I have a gun on set, everybody on that set has to have training, NRA training, or you're not on the set, including the actors. And if somebody hands you a gun, you open it and look at it yourself. Everybody does. That's how you prevent these things. One of the things I like to do on our sets is I tell people a lot of times, if you see anything that's dangerous, or I'm asking, with helicopter pilots in particular, if I'm asking you to do something you're uncomfortable with, tell me and don't do it. You are authorized to stop this shoot, any of you, and you see something really dangerous. And I make that real clear. And we've had a couple of very large shoots where I've got 2 or 3 airliners moving on the ground or over and around cameras and people. That is tricky and dangerous. And so we were very careful with it. And we never had anything really happen. But I did have a crew save my ass off a crane, because we were at Dallas-Fort Worth. It was dusk going into night. We were up on a crane, and this is one of the Chapmans where the DP and myself both rode up, and we're on radios and everything else. And we had everything mapped out for the plane to come out right on the line, and we'd be clear of that tail with the sweep up at the end with the winglet. And it was coming, and the guys on the ground, we rehearsed it. A couple of planes had gone by, and this guy wasn't on the line. We couldn't see it coming. The guys on the ground did, and pulled the crane right out of the way right at the last second and kept us from getting killed, because he was moving at about 25 miles an hour, and that winglet was coming right at us. So that is, you know, we planned for it. We did everything right. Pilot just missed it by a little bit. It's dark, he can't see it, but they did, because they weren't looking for it. And we had talked about that, if something like that happens, what to do. And they had those big ropes on the arm, and they just pulled the arm out of the way. And I'm going, it was a great shot, what happened? And they said, we just saved your ass. And it was great. It really did work. But we had a couple of funny ones too. Ailey Kato was producer on a feature I did, and we were shooting pieces of it in IMAX. And we had to get a shot at the Vietnam Memorial in D.C. So we're heading out. We're going to do the Lincoln Memorial and the Vietnam Memorial at the same time. And we're coming through D.C. with 4 big trucks with all of our stuff at about 4 in the morning, get there to shoot first light. And somebody in the lead car was following a early GPS thing and took us too close to the White House with all these trucks. And so, yeah, you can see this one coming. So we're just driving along. We're past it now. Oh, we missed the turn. Okay, we'll go back here. We're headed right up the correct road, right on the way. And all of a sudden, there's a car comes in front of us with the lights on, and then there's 4 or 5 cars around us, and people from everywhere. And I have never seen so many automatic weapons in my life, including Uzis, and pointing at us. And Eiley was going. They came up to the car where I was, and they said, "Who's in charge?" And I said, "He is." Eiley was my producer. So we talked our way out of that, and they had to look in the trucks and make sure we just had film equipment. But that was kind of crazy. But the other thing was, when we finally got over to the Vietnam Wall, we had special permits for every place that we were going to shoot. We got to the Vietnam Wall the first time, and we're getting ready to set up, and we're looking at the permit and everything, and it all looks like perfect location. Then we get there, and they say, "No, you have to go over there." Well, there's a hill about like this, and we're on the other side of the hill, where you cannot see the Vietnam Wall at all. We said, "Well, that's what your permit says. You can be over there." And Eiley's going, "Wait a minute. We're supposed to be able to see it," and so on and so forth. Said, "Sorry." And they wiped us out. The actor had to go away. Crew had to go away. We had to come back another day. So we come back another day, and we've gone all the way to the Secretary of the Interior to get, and Atros Pro was one of my funders, so he had the juice to call that high up. So we had our permit to be out where we wanted to be to get the shot. And the head of security for the park police in that particular day was the same person who was there before, didn't like us for some reason. And she had her gun and had her hand on it and said, "You can't use a tripod. 85-pound IMAX camera, you cannot use a tripod." "What do you mean we can't use a tripod?" Says, "Your permit is for a feature film, and it doesn't say you can use a tripod, so you can't use one." And then we look over and said, "Well, what about them?" The broadcast people were standing there, news people, with all their cameras on tripods. And they said, "They're news, you're not." So I said, "Well, can we put it on we'll shoot it low. Can I put it on an equipment case?" "No, that's really a tripod." "Can I put it on the ground?" "No, you can't put it on the ground. It's got to be handheld." And I mean, she's like saying, "I'll arrest you if you do it." So what we finally came up with, we got one of the grips to get on all fours. We put a blanket on his back, put the camera on his back, and got the goddamn shot. True story.
Thank you, Fred. Okay, Mr. Addison, I believe you're next.
I'm going to ask for a little assistance on this one because he's part of this story.
This can't include me. Was I part of this? I don't know. Oh, no. I'm going to sit here.
Hi. So, about a year ago, actually a year back in August, my good friend and partner in crime on a lot of things, DJ, called me up and said, "Hey, I've got this project. I do visual effects, you do production, so I need someone to handle production on this project. Could you do it?" And I said, "Sure, I can do it." So we went and met with the client. It was the day after my birthday.
Oh, it was the day after your birthday?
It was the day after my birthday. Yeah, thanks. Happy stinking birthday. So go and meet with the client. And DJ had warned me that the client was a little bit, eccentric. Yes, eccentric. And so we go and meet, and as I sat through the meeting, I kind of got some, I like to say that I didn't get red flags, there were red banners, okay? But it was the year of the pandemic, work was slow, I got 2 kids at home, Christmas is coming up, I'm thinking I gotta have toys, what kind of father am I gonna be? So I reluctantly said, "Yeah, why not, let's do this." It all went downhill from there.
Really fast.
So we went to a production meeting with the client to talk about what she wanted. Client wasn't real clear, other than a lot of vague ideas, a lot of concepts. We said that we needed to write a script. We would have to do all the things that you normally do. I mean, you're all production people. You know what's involved. She basically didn't. She wanted to. I mean, we were meeting maybe like on a Tuesday. She didn't understand why we weren't shooting on Saturday. You know, we needed actors, we needed locations, crew. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And so we said, well, first thing we're going to do is write a script. And the audience that the project was geared towards was of another country. So we have to be kind of vague because we are under NDA. And so we've figured, well, we should not be doing, directing or writing this. So we got appropriate people to do this. And we wrote a script. We met with the client, handed the script, said she loved the script. We decided we'd do some rewrites. But then after that, we had another meeting just for the production folks to talk about the comments, to do a script rewrite. Well, she found out that we had another meeting without her and lost her lid and decided that she would have a meeting without me because I got blamed for everything, being that I was the head producer. The best part about that meeting was, as it was happening, I get a text from DJ, and I saved it because it was so great. I said, "How's it going?" His text back to me was, "This is the Hindenburg."
So yeah, it was. The thing that we've not mentioned yet was that there was name talent attached as well, so there were levels of approvals and just the things that go along with hiring name talent. A lot of the difficulties that go along with that.
Well, and so then after that, just to keep the story moving, we could do a whole meeting on just this project. Like, I could sit here for the full hour and regale you with stories, but obviously we can't do that because time being.
And we don't have whiskey.
Yes. So, but what came out of the Hindenburg meeting was there doesn't need to be a script. We just need to go film. So we rejiggered everything, came up with a shot list, accelerated the date to shoot. And basically, there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm leaving out that's just as hysterically comical and makes me want to scream out loud. But we end up getting to the shoot day. Had a production meeting the day before, told client, I need talent on set 7 a.m. I don't want talent waiting around. I need them there at 7 for makeup, for wardrobe, to go over the shoot day, everything like that. We're going to need to be rolling at 9 a.m. That's what I want to do. 8:45 the next morning, talent is not there. Go to client, where's talent? I told him to be here at 9. Why would you do that? So client gets there at 9, we get delayed. We then have to move, after we shoot in one location, we have to move everything. We get delayed by an hour. So then that rolls into lunch. We have to break for 2 hours. Client is now steaming mad at me, not understanding why this happened. She wanted me to fire our producer at one point. One of our other producers wasn't going to do that. Had an argument with the hallway and that with her.
Yeah, the lunchtime anger that she had toward you was exacerbated because she started feeding this person. I believe they were margaritas.
Oh yeah. Alcohol on set.
Yeah.
Always a winner.
And all the rest of the cast.
Yes.
Yeah.
As well.
Starting at 10 a.m., which seems aggressive. I felt it was a strong statement.
So we had a full day of shooting with said name talent around, was it 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Our client comes to us and says, talent's going home. No, we have a full day. He's tired. You had too long of a lunch. He wants to go home. It was Halloween last year, so he wanted to really go home and go to a party. Mm-hmm. So talent left. We said, okay, talent needs to be here at 8 a.m. the next morning. Apparently, talent went out and got drunk that night at a party. Propositioned, apparently, from what I hear, some of the female talent, and then didn't show up until 10 a.m. the next day on Sunday.
Was it 10?
It might have been 10:30, 11, and then left again at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, it was
1 o'clock when we needed them all day. So again, we have no script, so we're just shooting stuff. We have talent that wasn't there. Let's move on to post. We put together an edit. Our editor, who's extremely frustrated, not knowing what he's cutting because there's no script, it's just a bunch of shots. First thing at the end of the meeting, client looks at us and says, "There's no story here." At which point our editor just about dies. I want to jump out the second story window at my office. And we said, yeah, because you didn't want a script. Oh, and her bodyguard was giving us notes. That was the other fun part.
Yeah.
So we have to, long story again, whole bunch of stuff happens. We end up going back out to shoot, to make a story at this point. Is a script written for this extra shoot day? No. No.
And the new story is now based on kind of a sketch comedy piece that this person had seen. So it wasn't anything in line with what we were doing. I mean, this was, not only was it adding story, but it was a complete new direction.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just, it wasn't something that takes one day of shooting to fix.
Right.
So
we go out, and what we should say too is this project was supposedly like a promo piece for a show being pitched to a network. And the talent that we had named talent was to be the host of said show. So we get out to film, and some people here were on that day, and they can attest, said talent had no talent. Terrible. Bad. So we filmed, and I had shown up with like an idea of what we would kind of need to get. Well, client yelled at me twice within the first 5 minutes of being in there. So I said, you know what? You're directing today. I'm just going to help the crew, and you're in charge. You tell camera, you call action, you call cut, you're in charge. My editor quit after that, so I had to do the re-edit. I pieced together this, whatever it was, sent it to her for review, and all I got back was, after I said, okay, this is your third edit, you have 3 edits beyond this, you need to pay more, so I need to know what changes you want to make to this so we can go forward. All I got back were the grass isn't green, it needs to look like it does on a particular sports channel. And the sky isn't blue. And I said, okay, that's color correction. We're going to get to that. That's color grading. Right now, I just need to editorially want to make changes to the edit. Grass isn't green. That's not what we asked for. So after going round and round, trying to get client to sign a document basically saying that we are good, that we can move on to color grading, never signed it. Thankfully, the client just sort of disappeared.
yeah.
And we're either waiting for an email for changes or lawsuit paperwork.
So before that shoot day, there weren't really stakeholders so much as kind of people that this person values the opinion of that they would bring to meetings. And in the meetings before the second shoot, we were told that, you know, everyone except her were really happy with it.
Yes.
And, you know, to use a quote, it was, if they don't choose it, you know, if they don't pick up the show, it's not because they don't like the video. So then we, you know, but there always seemed to be a problem. Eventually that problem was the lack of story. Then it became the lack of colors. What I felt terrible about is Eric, my good friend, also a client. I call him up. I say, hey, I met one time with this person. They seem great. Want to hop on? And throughout most of this, so while he's dealing with all this, I'm kind of golden boy because I don't have anything to do. We had one conversation where I'm like, yeah, we can do some of this stuff. Like, sure, you know, it wasn't about budget. It wasn't about deadlines. It wasn't about anything. Is this possible in the pantheon of technology? And I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of that is. And, you know, some of it we'll figure out how we can kind of whittle it down. You know how you do in the first meeting of like, yeah, let's, you know, there's areas that we need to look at. But other than that, sure. And then it was around 9 months into this production of this, 9 months into this 1.5-minute video that we made. When it turned on me as well, which made me feel better because then it was like, see,
It made me feel better too.
yeah, it was like, yeah, see, it's not. But that also meant we broke down with communications, and yeah, there's no. We'll send up a flare.
The final thing I'll say is, again, we could do like a whole thing on this like lessons learned. But the pivotal moment was on either the reshoot day or the final shoot day. I'm riding in a cart with the client's assistant, and the assistant just looks me in the eye and says, "You need to find a way out of this project."
Yeah, I think my moment came even earlier than that. It was the first meeting, and you were just kind of outlining, okay, first we're going to set up a schedule, and she interrupted you when you said that we're going to set up a schedule to shoot, and she said, "Are you anal retentive?"
Oh yeah.
It was like, oh, it's that kind of party. So.
Yeah, I remember that moment because that was one of the red banners that went up. I'm just like, oh, good Lord. So, needless to say, if you want to hear more, there's a few people in this crowd who are a part of it who can attest to everything that I'm saying. they will remain nameless. However, if you ever have red flags, if you see those red flags, I don't care how desperate you are, walk away. As Mr. Tao would say, and famously, it's not worth your stomach lining, okay? This project was just a nightmare. I'm not gonna lie to you, I still have a bit of fear that, like, my lawyer, I have him check, like, court filings every once in a while to make sure something's not being filed against me, because I've not heard from her for quite a while. But yes, it was a lesson in client management and trusting your gut and patience and being able to stand your ground and not let a client bully you, but also just trying to manage chaos, because that's literally what it was. When we were out there filming, we didn't have a schedule. I've got a director that's, doing the best he can with a client that has no clue what she's doing or what she wants, and I'm trying to produce it all and keep everybody sane. And yeah, so good times.
Yeah. And I would say I did learn two things. One was
so yeah, go ahead and then I'll answer his question.
I was gonna say one was I'm gonna stick to animation from now on because it ain't about that noise. But also it was a very nice learning experience because I'm very conflict averse. And it was nice to see you operate in such an environment where it was only conflict. So when I completely shut down into my little hoodie, you were you handled it very well. So good job, buddy.
Thanks. So to answer the question about payment, so early on I had to have a meeting with a client's attorney. That meetings went so bad that the lawyers refused to speak to me anymore because their demands were just outrageous. But one of the demands that I fought for was being paid a third before the shoot, a third on the day of the shoot, and the final third at delivery. So client misunderstood all that and apparently thought that she just had to write 3 checks. So at the end of the second day of filming of the original shoot, I get handed 3 envelopes, to which I open up and I look at DJ and I'm like, there's 3 checks in here. To which DJ says, go to the bank now. So I got fully paid and I'm fine. So
That's the best lesson of the night.
and I still love him.
Get all the money up front.
Despite it all.
Yeah, I think the lesson really here is that if DJ reaches out to you for help in a project, I think it's probably the lesson we really want to learn here. Okay, Mr. Tao, come on up.
Oh, you kids with your jumbo jets, your car crashes, your jousting horses. I want to thank you guys for being the warm-up band for me and Eric Addison, which are going to talk about the really scary shit, which is clients. So my craziest production story, I really don't have a lot of on-set craziness, so I'm either really good at managing sets or really bad at managing clients, because mine are all just pretty much around clients. I had one client who will remain nameless, who was a problem from the beginning, and it was one of those clients where you kept trying to train them, and there was no way you were going to be able to train them. And we had a project where it was a full day shoot. We were going to start down in Coronado and shoot interviews at an event that they were doing. We were going to film their speaker and then shoot some interviews with some of the attendees of this event to talk about what they had learned at this event. So I had been going back and forth with my contact at the company to get approval on the questions that we were going to ask for the interview. And this had always been a problem with this individual. And it was always like the day before I would finally get back from her any changes to the questions. That didn't happen on this one. And I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, nothing. So shoot day, we start in Coronado. Tony was actually doing the interviews. We're on the second interview, going through about halfway through the questions, and this thing starts going off in my pocket. Guess what it is? It's the changes to the questions. We're already 2 interviews in. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So we finished that up, and then we were supposed to head up to their headquarters up in Miramar, where they were doing an event because it happened to be going on Independence Day. So they were doing this big celebration at their headquarters where they had like a bunch of vendors and a beer truck and just all kinds of stuff for the public to come in and see what they're all about. We're supposed to be up there at 2:00. So we leave Coronado around 11 and stop to get the crew lunch on the way up. We're sitting in Islands off of Balboa about halfway through a burger when this starts going off again. And it's the client. Well, there's somebody from the city who's here speaking right now, and you need to be covering that. Well, I can leave now, but I'm not going to get there in time. So we leave, we get there. Of course, the speaker's already done. So I go to look for my contact because she's the one that's supposed to provide the framing for this video, right? To tell us what this whole thing is about. And she's already agreed to this. She knows exactly what she needs to talk about. So I start running around shooting B-roll. Tony goes to get her, and Tony comes back to me and she goes, "Oh, you're going to love this." And I'm like, "What?" She goes, No, just wait. She's coming." So she comes to do the interview. Remember when I said there was a beer truck? She'd been at the beer truck all morning long. She is shot. She's drunk. She's slurring her words. And Tony goes, "We can't interview her." And I go, "The hell we can't." Because if somebody comes back and doesn't want to pay me, this is my proof, right? So we put her in front of the camera and she slurs her way through the interview. But wait, it gets better because she goes, "We should have the CEO. We should have him on camera." That's a brilliant idea. So she goes to get him. He's been at the beer truck all morning too. He's just as sloshed as she is. So we cut the whole thing together after we interview 2 drunks and send it to him and get like 1 or 2 rounds of approvals or changes. And then she tells me that she wants a discount because it didn't quite come across the way they wanted it to. To which I said, "No, you're not getting a discount." And that was the last time we ever worked with that client. It was one of them that you just couldn't train. My other client story actually happened also during COVID time. And like Eric had mentioned, you know, when the red flags start going off, just run away. I've been in this business long enough that I'm pretty good at those red flags. This client flew right underneath the radar, just totally under the radar. And again, this was a project, well, in the middle of COVID that we took for considerably less money than we would have ever taken a project, but we just needed work. And at one point, she was telling me about the other production companies that she had worked with in the past and had difficulties with. In hindsight, if you have a client that tells you that, that should be a red flag immediately. It doesn't mean that they wound up working with bad production companies, or maybe they did, but that should be a red flag. So this project also went very, very long because of COVID. But we started down the path of doing pre-production. And this was kind of an instructional video around irrigation systems. So there was a specific order that things had to be shot. Specifically, one of the problems we had was there were some shots where the ground had to be dry, some shots where the ground would be wet because it would be after they had ran the irrigation system. So we started going through the pre-production process, and we're lining everything up, and we're getting shot lists together, and we're putting everything together. And she's telling us all along, "You guys are amazing. I've never worked with a production company that is this detailed. The amount of work that you guys are putting into all of these shot lists and to make sure that everything is done right is just amazing. It's just, you guys are amazing." And we're like, "Well, yeah, that's how you do this stuff." So we're rolling along thinking everything's fine. We got all of our shot lists. Everything's nailed. The 9 o'clock the night before the shoot, which is in a park in Chula Vista and we have the city involved to be there, she sends me a brand new script. Everything has been reordered. And I'm like, I thought you liked pre-production. So we got to go out. Now we're trying to reshoot this thing, and we get there, and of course we're all confused as hell because everything is moved around. And then we do the shoot, and at the end of the day, her technical expert, who was the guy that was on camera, starts talking about how we should have had this shot and that shot and this shot and that shot, and we missed this and we should have had that. And I'm looking at her like, did this guy ever see this stuff? I don't think her technical expert ever saw it. We actually wound up going back and shooting another day to get a couple of shots, or a half day to get a couple of shots that we had to have because, from the technical guy. We wound up not charging them for the gear on that day, just charging them for the labor. And even with that, then it just went into crazy rounds of approval, even to the point where now all of a sudden they wanted 3 or 4 different rounds of approvals on the captions. And I'm like, these are captions. What can change? The other lesson that I'll give you that I learned from this, I've learned this from other projects as well, but it really kind of was refreshed in my mind. If you have a client that's had other stuff done in the past, and you go and look at that work that has been done for them, if you see things in the edit that are just like, that doesn't make any sense because it would be so easy to just fix that, that should be a huge red flag, because that means that the production company, specifically the editor, got to a point with that client where when the client was making really horrible decisions, they were just like, yep, whatever, I'll do it, just to get it out of the edit bay. I mean, at one point, this lady, we were we were transitioning from 2 screens, graphic screens, that their people had made, and they were both basically white with text on them. And at one point I was dissolving and she just kept telling me, well, something's weird. And she couldn't define what weird was. And I finally figured out it was the dissolve. And I said, well, why don't I just do a fade down and a fade up? And she said, okay, let's try that. So I did fade down, fade up. Keep in mind, mostly white screens with text on them. She says, well, the fades look weird. I said, well, what looks weird? She said, well, while it's fading to black, it turns gray. I said, that would be physics, and I can't change that. So we wound up doing this really oddball cut that was just so completely and totally wrong. But again, if you're looking at stuff and you see these little tiny errors that would be just so easy to fix, that should also be a red flag, that it might be that person drove their production company to the point where they were like, I don't care what horrible decision you make, I'm just going to do it to get it out of my edit bay and get a check. Those are my client stories.
Thank you, Mr. Tao. I believe, Jane, you had a couple stories you want to regale us with. I did note a theme of alcohol in the last 2 stories, so if you got a little alcohol on this one, Jane, then we'll do the trifecta.
Okay. No. Actually, I have something else. 2 quick stories. One from San Diego, where I was working as a script supervisor on a short film, and we were shooting at a high school in the baseball field overnight. Kind of a circumstance like what we have here. And we had 2 beautiful cameras and a full crew and a very inexperienced, very green, very enthusiastic second AC. And at about 2 in the morning, there was a sound that is very familiar to all of us of the ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. And on came the sprinklers, that second AC through his jacket over the camera, grabbed it, and I swear that there was steam, kind of like the cartoon character from, now I can't remember, the Roadrunner. Yes, exactly, when he would take off. But of course, we had to clear the entire field, wait for it to stop, and then begin again. But there was a very, very experienced producer on that shoot who said at about 10 p.m., you don't think that the sprinklers are going to go off here at 2 o'clock, but it wasn't my place really to step into the production office and say, did you guys check? So anyway, that was one story. Moral of the story, check on the sprinklers. Second story didn't actually happen to me, but it happened to a colleague of mine who was, and it's one of those stories that I just must tell. He was working as a DP for one of the cop shows that was so popular in the 80s or 90s, like Cops or Real Stories of the Highway Patrol. And they were out and were brought on a call. So he was in the passenger seat of the vehicle. So someone else is driving. He's shooting from the front seat, and they are going after a white truck, like a white truck, the kind that would be a delivery truck, a panel van, an unmarked panel van, white. And as they're driving along at high speed through the neighborhoods, something is thrown onto the windshield of the car that's following, and it's a big thud. And then there's another one, and then there's another one. And I'm guessing that no one here can imagine what it was that was being thrown at the camera car. Tomatoes is a good guess. Eggs? No, not quite. I heard one more. Pizza dough. Pizza dough, that's a good one too. It was cottage cheese. It was a dairy truck. So you can imagine that with every thud, and there were hundreds of containers and 3 bad guys in the back of the truck. So they're pummeling the camera car. They're trying to run the windshield wipers. The cops are following. Finally, more police vehicles joined in the chase, and they were able to break down the car. But my friend Kevin talked about the wah, and what cottage cheese does when it's caught in your windshield wipers. So no moral to the story there. I don't know how you can prevent that. But thanks for letting me share. And thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, Jane. We have some more time. Mr. Brueggemeyer, I think you would line up, I'm sure. As you all know, Mike is the worst producer in town because his horror stories are so vast. But if you can just one, maybe just one or two.
It's kind of pick a subject and I have a horror story on it.
I'll get that up for you, sir.
Why, thank you. Hi, everybody. It's so good to be out and see all you guys. And now I have a light right in my eyes and I can't see any of you. So this story starts about 5 years ago when I worked with Mike and Tony on commercials for Wings and Things. The first commercial that we did ended up winning an Emmy, and the actor in the commercial is John Maxwell. And a while after I had the Emmy on my shelf, and a while after that commercial, he came over to visit. And we were chatting, and he's admiring the Emmy and said, "Man, I wish I could show this to my mom." And I said, "Take it and show it to your mom." And he's like, "Really?" I said, "Yes." So he took it, showed it to his mom. His mom loved it. He showed it to his manager and his agent in LA. He's like, "Hey, can I keep this for a little while?" I'm like, "Keep it for as long as you want because it's just taking up room on my shelf." Cut to mid-pandemic. I get a contract to do a pair of commercials for Cable, Pipe, and Leak. And they want them to be more like national commercials, less like local commercials. So we set up these scenarios where digging would be bad, okay? And I write scripts, and the client, the agency likes them, the client likes them. I get them approved, give them a budget, they're okay with the budget, and then they revise the script, and now it's, one of the commercials is 2 construction workers near a backhoe, and the backhoe digs into the ground, and there's a spark, and the hospital behind them goes dark. Okay, that's one commercial. The other commercial is the wife sitting there on the patio with her iced tea going, you know, if there were only some way we could figure out what's under the ground without digging all these holes. And it cuts to him, and he's halfway in a hole, and there's holes all over the yard. Okay, that's the gag. And then at the end of the commercial, he digs a shovel in, and the sprinkler and water pipe hits him. So those are the commercials. So we don't have a location to shoot them. I tell them, yes, we can hire a location, but it's going to cost money. The owner of the company says, come shoot it at my house, which is in Temecula. So we go and do a location scout. I tell him, this will be great. We're going to have to dig a big hole here in your yard. I can either hire people to do it or you can do it for me. He says, I have a son. And so I tell him I want a 3-foot deep, 3-foot square hole right here. And he takes some spray paint and marks it out. I'm like, great. So I come back home. I talk to the agency lady. I say, look, I can either increase my invoice or I can send you the bill for the backhoe. And she says, yeah, just arrange for the backhoe and send me the information and we'll have the agency pay for it. Perfect. So like a week later, I have sent her the information from the rental company in Temecula that's going to deliver the backhoe. I have arranged for a backhoe operator. I have the grip truck and 4 actors coming out and, just kind of like a big old production day. I drive up to Temecula early, go to the guy's front yard. He has dug the hole and put the dirt where I said the camera would be. Okay? So I grab the shovel and I start moving the dirt to other places I need it in the yard. I do that for about 10 minutes, and then I drive down to the end of the driveway. It's a gated community. I drive down on the outside of the gate and wait for the backhoe truck to deliver. While I'm sitting there, the backhoe driver calls me and says, yeah, I can't make it. I said, well, why not? He goes, I just can't. All right, I was paying you for this, right? Yeah, but it's all right. I'm like, no, it's not all right. Do you have anybody you can refer? Nah. Okay. So I call up YouTube and I'm rummaging through videos on how to operate a backhoe. And the time comes and goes for the backhoe to arrive. And so I call the rental company and say, hey, where's the backhoe? And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, well, the one I reserved the other day. And they say, oh, yeah, we have the reservation thing. It just never got paid for, so we didn't send it out. I'm like, well, if I pay for it right now, can you send it out? They go, absolutely. It'll be there at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. Okay, not good enough. So I call the agency lady and she goes, oh, yeah, my brother passed away and I've been really scattered. And I'm like, I can't blame you for that. All right, fine. So from the drive to the outside of the gate to the front of the driveway, I think I texted DJ Summit and said, can you make me a backhoe? And he said, sure. So I was going to solve that in post-production. And so I get up to the house. I am shoveling dirt around the yard to make the other fake holes. I have brought little round things of duvetine so I could lay them on the yard and then put little circles of dirt around them. And I see John Maxwell walking up the driveway. And he's got a box, an Emmy box in his hands. And he's walking up the driveway and he goes, hey, Mike, look what And the box falls open and the Emmy falls out. And goes, ba-bounce, ba-bounce, ba-bounce. And I'm shoveling because I need to move the dirt because the camera is going there. And I don't have a backhoe and I have to solve that. And And I'm like, all right. And he picks it up and he looks really upset. And I go over to him and I go, chill out. It's fine. No problem. Don't worry about it. And I look at it. Definitely Miami. Has my name on it. Has all the information on it. I go, all right, don't sweat it. We'll be fine. We'll deal with it after today, after the shoot day. He goes, okay, well, thank you very much. And I go, great, okay. And so I go back to shoveling dirt because I need to put the camera there. And John comes over and goes, you know what? It's injured. We might as well just put it in the grave. And he drops it in the hole and it snaps in half. And I go, hey, John, I'm shoveling right now. Can you climb down there and get that? Because it would take me a while to climb back up out of that hole. And he goes, okay. I'm like, and we'll deal with it later. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. I carry on with my shoveling, get the hole shoveled out. The actress arrives. The shoot starts happening. And I walk around to where craft service is and see 2 boxes. That SOB ordered an Emmy from China. He took it to his local trophy shop and had a fake thing put on it just so he could mess with me. He said it was the longest he's ever waited for. It took him 18 months of waiting to finally get in my presence so he could pull that practical joke off. And it was very, very disappointing the way I reacted.
Obviously never worked with you.
He showed me the video because, of course, he had set up somebody shooting it. The DP is hidden behind his truck, and he shows me the video, and it literally looks like this. So that is my horror story.
Thank you, Mike. It was a tough one to hoe there for that. Fortunately, the meeting will be over soon. Who else wants to? We got a little time. Anybody? JT, I'm sure you've got about 300,000 stories. Regale us with one.
So, oh, first, I was on that shoot, and I was late, and my guy, he forgot. So I had no crew guy, and I'm late, and I show up, and Mike's digging these holes, and I don't know what's going on. And so we get all set up. Everybody finally gets up to speed. And I'm running around, we're doing the night shot, and I have this big green screen I got to set up on the tennis court, and I whacked the heck out of my leg in a joker box that had the thing sticking out, and it got me good. So I'm bleeding like a stuck pig and trying to get that taken care of, and it was just part of the story he left out. It was pretty creative, and the spot turned out great. Spot turned out great. Okay. Okay, so to set the scene, it's about 1994. Movies of the week were still pretty big a thing. You know, they'd shoot a week or a four week schedule for a 2-hour movie they'd air on whatever, USA or something. So I was in the cycle of doing those as a crew guy. And we were shooting this one. It was going great. It was with some big names and stuff. And it was the last day of shooting. We were shooting at the ferry landing down in Coronado. And on the ferry landing there, it was during the day. We did half of the day. And at lunchtime, since it was the last day, they scheduled a big fiesta. And there were tables set up and a DJ and stuff. And it was more of a thing than I'd seen on a movie set for a movie of the week to have a final day with. And as that's finishing up, my job is to go out on the ferry landing, the dock area, all the way out along it are these sodium vapor lights that they want to change out for more tungsten lights. And it was my job. So I went out there by myself, in sight of everyone on the movie set, because they're all looking, back on the shore looking back, and I'm out there alone. And everybody's in a wonderful mood, finishing up their lunch, and it's just a festive day. And the only other person from production that was out there with me was one of the stand-ins. So I asked the stand-in if he would be kind enough to hold the 10-step A-frame ladder that I've collapsed, that I'm leaning against a light post out on this dock. So, yeah, sure, he'll do that for me. So I got the ladder there, and I take the light, and I'm climbing up the ladder, and I do my thing, and I look over. He's walked away from the ladder and is talking to some chiquitas over there, having a good old time. So it's safer for me to finish. So I finished, got back down, and I go, hey, I'm going to do these again, and I'd like you to hold my ladder, please. So a second one, I went up, sure enough. I'm up on top of the ladder, and I'm doing my bit, and I notice he's back trying to wet his whistle. So I get back down from that one. I say, please, will you watch the ladder for me? Third time. I go up the ladder. This was the post that had the no fishing sign stuck on it, those metal signs. So I'm up over that, and lo and behold, he walks away again. And the ladder decides to join him. So I go, what? And I didn't fall very far, though, because I caught my arm on that sign I was talking about. So after pulling myself off that and getting down, I was bleeding a little bit. So everybody had seen the whole thing happen. So the DP comes running down to grab me and stuff, and everybody's rushing to try to help me, and they get transpo. We got to take him to the hospital. Well, if you know the Coronado situation at all, you know the hospital's right there. It's like literally next door, but they couldn't find it. So they get me in a car, and they're driving around in circles trying to find the hospital. And finally I didn't know no artery, so other than losing a little arm fat to the chum for the fish, I was okay. And as they made a ritual each week on Fridays, which this was the Friday, there was a raffle. So at the end, when everybody else was finishing up, I was bandaged up and got back to set. They all said somehow I had won the raffle. So I got the raffle money, and I was like, oh, okay, we're going to have a good night tonight. I got my pain medication. We're going to have some fun, right? Well, I put that on my personal, and that got locked in the truck, so I didn't have any pain meds the whole freaking weekend. But it all worked out great, and that's that story. If there's time, can I tell something about The Usual Suspects, that movie? Do you know it? It's a movie that was kind of big in the 90s, late 90s, I think, with Kevin Spacey and, who's Gabriel Byrne. And we were shooting that. Actually, they'd started shooting this film, and a best boy I didn't know called me cold on the phone down in Oceanside and said, hey, would you like to come up and work on this movie? We're going to be shooting in San Pedro and at the harbor. I said, okay, sure. We're doing all nights. Like, okay, well, sure. So I go up there, and it was when they're doing the big boat finale scene. And if you're familiar with the film at all, there's a shootout that takes place on this big Russian trawler. And so we were up shooting there, and the crew was fried. They'd gone from days to nights, and I was the only one coming in fresh expecting nights. So I kind of got a lot of the jobs thrown at me, and did them well. So they kept me on, and I ended up lighting the whole boat at the end for the big wide stuff, all pretty much solo. And while everybody else was kind of sleeping. But as we're doing the big last night, we're like 3 pages behind, and that sky is turning the color when it's just starting not being black. It's starting to get that little blue coming, and about that time we have 3 condors up in the air around this boat, which was really a creepy boat, by the way. It was really, it just smelled funny. There were rooms that were locked that we were not allowed to go into. It was filled with Albanians that no one spoke English, and the crew were just there watching us the whole time. And it was just, the whole thing was creepy. Not only the story, but the actual scene itself. And as we're shooting this big, the last stuff, trying to get in the big shots, all of a sudden, this line of harbor police comes rushing up. Sirens on, woo, 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 woo. Comes up, the guys get out of their car, the officers get out, and they pull out and start chambering weapons. And I don't know what they're going to be pointing at, but we're just sitting there going, and it turns out there was some bad stuff going on in the boat. They killed the condors, brought them down, shut down production. This is the last day we got the boat, and they're about ready to take the boat away, and we haven't got the big shots yet. The DP, Newt Siegel, was, he kept his cool the whole time. And if you've seen the final movie, you see how well he was able to pull off the matching. But there was some serious tension going on, and I'm not privy to exactly what went down. But within about 45 minutes, we were able to have the condors go back up and finish the night, which just barely turned into day as we were done. And we got the shots and we got the movie, as always, as that's how it works out in this kind of crazy world that we're in. And throughout all these experiences, the only thing I can say is that the safety thing that's been mentioned tonight, and this whole action that went on with the whole film set with this rust thing, has just been eating a part of my soul away, because everybody here, we all know how this can happen and that it shouldn't have happened. And we can't let it happen again. Didn't make the mood down, but I just had to get that out of my chest. There you go.
Good, great. Thank you, JT. All right, Jane, Robin, you time for one more? Wrap it up? Okay.
Just one more quick thing from me. I want to say thank you again to Dan Cheatham for putting together this amazing set. He had assistance from someone from Eric Drake, who I don't know if he's here any longer, but the two of them put the idea together and put all the parts and pieces together. Thank you to the technical team from the board of directors. That includes Michael Wood, who has been directing behind the scenes, Robin, Jeff. I know I'm going to be forgetting people. Mark, our MC, Bob, our CFO, David, who brought our refreshments. And as Mark said, it's the board of directors who puts these meetings together. We're currently at 9. We can have as many as 15. And we really would appreciate the support. It's a fun endeavor. So consider joining the board, and we will see you next month. Thanks, everybody, for coming out.
3 pumpkin slices up front. Oh, no, it's good. It's been so long.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
Will you grab one of me? Thank you.